That's a very good question. First off, what I'd like to say is that the ideology of now we have very similar ideologies here, but the ideology of the particular sheriff is not really relevant to the actual administration of the duties of the sheriff. We are obligated to enforce the laws that are on the books. We have a representative government that makes the laws. That is our duty to enforce them. Now, having said that, the ideology is very, very important, though, because what often happens is that when there is pending legislation that comes up, and it can be, it's usually more state legislation than federal legislation, but typically if there's federal legislation that comes away, particularly in the assembly districts, the 57th and 59th assembly districts, the representatives typically will contact our sheriff's office and to get our input on the laws. That's where the ideology of the particular candidate comes into play. And I think that we have an important role to voice the opinion of the people because we represent everyone here. It doesn't matter if you're red or blue, but our ideology is who we are, and I think that we have an obligation to at least let our lawmakers know this is our theory on the Second Amendment. This is our theory on privacy rights or limited government. Thank you.
To kind of directly address the question too, to start out with, you said, involvement in sheriff's associations and things like that. I think, Marty did hit on some, but I think again, the unique position of the sheriff is, we are a partisan position. We are elected as a Republican or a Democrat. Here in Washington County, it'll be as a Republican. And I completely agree that part of one of the principles that I talk about of respect is respecting people of all beliefs, right? We will all equally protect those people. But I think the unique role the sheriff plays is that we can be the voice for the citizens that we serve. And I think partially it is our obligation to advocate for causes that we're passionate about through the sheriff's associations, the Badger Sheriff's Association, the National Sheriff's Association. I'll give you one example of where sheriffs can step in is when the Wisconsin Chiefs of Police Association sent a letter to Governor Walker making school safety recommendations. Now, I realize that letter doesn't represent the beliefs of all the chiefs in the state of Wisconsin, and probably doesn't represent the beliefs of any of the chiefs here in Washington County. But that the committee or whoever came up with those school safety recommendations made the recommendation that there be further infringements on our Second Amendment rights. Some of those recommendations involved mandatory background checks for all firearms purchases. Some of those recommendations involved bringing back 48-hour waiting periods to purchase all firearms. So I think one of the important roles the sheriff can play is the sheriff is the one law enforcement position that can stand up and counter that and say, as that they are not speaking for all law enforcement officers. And the sheriff can advocate at the Badger Sheriff level, association and things like that to say, what, we need to counter these types of opinions and this type of advice being given to our lawmakers. And I would have no issue as well on national type issues too, that affect public safety locally. Again, signing on to petitions to the president and Congress to pass certain legislation that would advocate for things that would enhance public safety locally. Thank you for the question.